Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers of happiness, joy, and a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation, and we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Oh, Melissa, you just got back from one of my favorite places to hike and adventure.
Oh my gosh.
Southern Utah.
Yes, Southern Utah.
So you went to Zion and Bryce and some other places.
And Escalante. Yeah, which isn't
Awesome.
a national park, but oh my gosh, is that absolutely beautiful there.
Yeah, isn't there something about those parks and that environment that is inspiring?
It is. It's it almost feels magic. It sounds really silly to say that, but it does feel like it has properties that are otherworldly there, without question.
Yeah. Well, especially a place like Bryce. With,
oh my gosh.
What do they call them? All the little
the hoodoos.
Hoodoos. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we went for a week and we met some friends of ours out there. So there were four of us, and we stayed at a house right between Bryce Canyon and Zion National Park, and so we were about 30 minutes from each one. And this is the crazy thing. Is when you go to Bryce, everything is orange and like striated layers of hoodoos and massive stalactites and just like, sandy and lacking much green at all.
Oh yeah, there's not like a lot of vegetation. If you get down in the canyon, there's some vegetation, but everywhere else it's like Mars.
Yes, exactly. And so then if you drive back from the house, then you go a half hour in the other direction to Zion, it is like a completely different environment. Like, again, it's all sort of those layered rocks and everything for miles, but it feels more like the Grand Canyon. There's way more green, it's the colors are not orange now. Now they're like, maybe there's a light orange, but otherwise it's like whites and grays and blacks. It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
They have those like weeping walls where like vegetation is growing like straight out of the rock.
Yeah. It's just, and there are trees growing right out of literal rocks.
Yep.
Makes no sense. It just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, we went on this trip and we did a lot of hiking, and we're in pretty good shape. We were pretty ready for the hike. The temperatures vary so much too. That's the other thing, because the elevation is so wildly different, So like at our peak elevation, we were at 11,000 feet. And so you start and it can be 90 and it can be 40. It's like, or it's actually probably both and on the same day with about 2.5 hours in between.
Yeah, your backpack has to have all of the layers in it.
Yeah, everything.
So did you guys get up to the Narrows? Did you do the Riverwalk and up to the Narrows? And did you bike up there?
Yes. So JJ's recommendation, everybody, and I would highly recommend it also, is if you go to Zion, you can't drive in the park except for there's big buses that have all these. There are 9 stops along the bus line, so people get in and out the bus the whole time, and that's how they see the park.
It's like one road up a hill.
Right. Yeah. That's the best way to say it. Or you can park your car outside of the park, rent e-bikes, and rent river boots and hiking sticks, and you have full control of your own schedule with the e-bikes, which is what we did. But we did have one little small incident on the way.
An incident on the bikes. Okay. What happened?
We were on the e-bikes, and my girlfriend Karen is like, "Oh, this is so easy. You're going to love this, Melissa. These e-bikes are so great." Because I've biked, but I've never been e-biking. I want to get one, but I don't own one.
They're wild, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, I love them. However, they're quite heavy, and Karen is very small. She's just a little peanut. And when we were going up the hill right after we got the bike, so we really weren't comfortable with them yet, right? So we had our Camelback backpacks filled with water on our backs and all the gear. We had the bikes loaded with the sticks and the boots. And anyhow, Karen's bike went off the tar.
Oh.
And there's quite a step between the tar and the shoulder. And it was such a step that her bike tipped over. And when her bike tipped over, it tipped into the lane that happened to have one of the buses coming.
Oh, geez.
So the buses can't go past the bikers unless the bikers are stopped. Well, we had technically been stopped. And her bike then tipped over. And so the bus didn't move. The bus just went right through. And her stick, which was sticking out of the back of her bike, in a PVC tubing, the bus's tire was about, I don't know, 1.5 feet away from the top of her stick. So it was really close.
Really close, yeah.
And that really freaked her out. And it was like 95 degrees, too, by the way. It was 95 degrees the day we were in Zion. So we had that little snafu. And the park was so crowded.
Yeah.
We got there at, 8, as per, again, your recommendation. And we were so glad. We were so glad that we did all of the things that you said. You should do this, you should do that. Anyway, it was absolutely beautiful. But it does get you thinking a little bit about your natural abilities and your age and your ability to react to things.
Yeah, because that's a big adventure, right? Like you guys biked miles up a hill, then you hiked for miles into to get to the trailhead for the river hike, and then you hiked in the river with sticks and special boots, like over rocks, loose rocks, wet
and
rocks. It
was not like a babbling brook; it was a raging river.
Yeah, sometimes it's like up to your waist, right? It's pushing you back.
Yeah,
that's a big adventure.
It really is, and it does kind of make you. I don't remember if we ever talked about that. I think we did on our pod. I don't remember when, but the book Die With Zero, teaching people how to, like, everything is a currency, and including your time and your physical energy, and how everything is an exchange for everything, So it's like you really do need to be thinking about what are the things that you want to accomplish in your physical age while you are still capable and also have the mental interest and acuity to do those same things.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Like, is your actually physical and maybe even more mental ability to do things changing as you're getting older?
Yeah, for
like
sure.
Maybe because we have talked about how, a lot of times your mindset is the thing that's limiting you.
Exactly.
Often,
that's right.
And we had a whole episode, I think, where we talked about how I was saying that I think my brain gives up before my body.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of mindset around like, oh, I'm too old to do that anymore.
Right.
Or like I'm not as good a shape as I was when I was younger.
Right. Exactly.
But are those stories actually even true? Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing too. It's not even like, am I still, in the same shape I was when I was younger? But I think your mind does sort of play games with you a little bit as you get older, because you may be, because I think a lot of it is comparison, right? It's like, I think a lot of the decisions that you make about yourself, you're comparing yourself either to the earlier you, what you were before, or at your peak, or, you always hear people say, oh, I want to get down to my high school weight when they're 60, and it's completely inappropriate, right? But that's like one of the comparisons that you do. But I also think the other thing that you're measuring yourself against is other people your age. So this was super interesting. We were walking in Escalante, which is not a national park. It's just a place that has tons of trails. And we took another moderate trail, air quotes. It was 2.5 miles round trip.
It's West Coast moderate, not Minnesota moderate.
Yes. Minnesota moderate means, oh, look, there's a small land lump, But yes, we were walking on this trail, and it was out and back, a little over a mile each way. And there was an absolutely breathtaking waterfall at the end of it. It was a huge basin. You came into this basin, and this waterfall was facing you, coming right over it. You know, I don't even know how high it was, but it was absolutely massive. So it was a beautiful trail, and everybody knew about how cool this waterfall is. So it was kind of crowded, not too bad, but we met 4 individuals on the trail going out, and they were stopping, looking, and we were looking for the pictographs, because there's across the valley were these beautiful, cool pictographs, and they were looking too. And they were older. We didn't learn until after that they were 80. Each one of them were 80, in unbelievable shape for being 80. Like, shocking to see people that age actually doing this hike, right? But they were going really slow, and one of the women was making jokes, and she said, well, they let us out of the nursing home to come and do this. And at first, the way she said it, they're all from Jersey, so they all have the Jersey accent, and they're really dry, you know, like as you would expect. And she's like, they let us out of the house to come and do this, right? And her other girlfriend was getting mad at her. Stop saying that. Stop. I don't like that you're saying that. Because she didn't like that she was making fun of their age. And the first woman says, well, I'm waiting for a kidney. I think it's okay if I make jokes. And it like kind of took this, it was like, what? Yeah. So it turns out this woman is literally on a list for a kidney. And then as we start talking more, they're with their husbands. One of the husbands has dementia. And the other husband is walking with 2 walking sticks, and he has neuropathy in his feet. Both feet are numb. Both feet are completely numb all the time. And I just, you know, and because they're making fun of their age, it's almost like they want us to make fun of their age. And I am not touching that with a 100-foot pole. I am in awe of these people that are 80 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, you know, here I am, 58. I think the oldest in our group was 64. And thinking, you know, here we are kind of like testing our own physical limits. And here are people that are 80 years old. And so we got to talking with them, and then they said, just pass us. We may not make it all the way. We just are on this trail for a while. So we went, but as we're coming back, we ran into them again, and now they are stuck. There's one part of the trail that's quite high, and it's very rocky to come down. And there were like a natural stairs, air quotes, stepping places. Maybe there's a technical term for that when you're when you're climbing.
There's a technical term.
But the man with the 2
But what I imagine is that it's probably pretty loose, right? There's like little rocks and sand and everything everywhere, so it's not like you got to be really stable on your feet, or else you'll just slide onto your butt.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the reason this trail was hard in general was because it was mostly sand. So it's very difficult to walk in. It's like walking across the beach, except the beach is not at all flat, and you're wearing thick boots and socks. And so here he's stuck on this top of this plateau, and he's got his 2 walking sticks, and all 4 of them they're very calm. Nobody's stressed out at all. They're just chilling out, you know, but they're like, well, we're trying to figure out how to get him down. And so Mitch and then our buddy Steve, they said, well, can we help you? No, you know, so you could tell we're 80. We are at our physical limitation, but we are not interested in help. Okay. But the way Mitch and Steve talked with the guy's like, yeah, okay, I'll take I don't usually, but I'll take a hand. So they helped him down. Well, we learned then that they were all 80, and 3 of the 4 were physicians. They had been traveling together doing these kinds of trips for 50 years.
Wow.
Wasn't that something?
Yeah.
And he said, normally I don't take help, but this will be my last trip. Yeah. And we were so sad by that. So we ended up the last half mile coming down that trail with all 4 of them. And then we also picked up a wayward French woman who was traveling alone. So we became kind of this like group, you know, and got the best picture of all of us at the end of it. But it was just really striking to me as you think about the restrictions that we put on ourselves when we're deciding what we're going to do for vacations or for physical activities, the restrictions that we put on ourselves, and then the restrictions that are put on us and we don't have control over that. And then how you deal with that, because it's very different than a self-imposed restriction. Yeah, I just found that really fascinating.
Yeah. I guess a sidebar is every time I go on a national park adventure, we like meet some people and do exactly what you did. Yes.
Oh, it's so
whenever
fun.
we go on a hiking adventure, it's just like, I don't know. It's just people who are adventuring out seem to like have an affinity towards each other.
Yes. Yeah.
It's great. Such a good community.
I know. This French woman had been in the States for 2 weeks. She had another week after ours. She was partially sleeping in her car.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would camp. She did stay in a hotel a couple of days, but she went and stayed on a dude ranch for the first week and helped brand animals. Wow. And I was like, what?
How do you even figure out how to do that?
Oh, she was just delightful. It was really, really fun. Anyway.
Well, this idea around like the stories we're telling ourselves as we get older, like, I don't know, you maybe were telling yourself a story about like, oh, are we able to do this trip in our 50s, right? Because part of it is physical, and you like, but you're capable of it, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
But it is interesting how as you get older, those ideas start creeping in more and more.
Yes.
And the question is, where are those coming from? Are those coming from inside you? Are they coming from external stories, like a culture thing?
Yeah. My girlfriend and I were having this discussion on the trip because, she said to me, well, you have a lot of self-control. And I said, I do, I absolutely do. And she was meaning that mentally I can make a decision and then come hell or high water, I'm going to do that decision if I've thought it through and that's my choice. And she was sort of contrasting and comparing her own way of thinking about things. And that, like, for example, that bike tipping over really threw her for a loop. And of course it would for anybody. And then she ended up getting heat stroke after that. So we're standing in the Narrows and her face is just, super red and she's just kind of done at that point. And it is, partially it is a physical decision that you really can't do much about. And then it is also a mental decision and you can do something about that. She did an amazing job. She got out of the park and then she just collapsed into it. So she got really sick afterwards, but she made it out of the park, which was amazing. But it is interesting to watch people's you can see people's minds working in environments like that. And how much of it is thoughtful consideration, looking at your own scenario versus not being very thoughtful and just, well, that's what everybody does, and throwing yourself into things.
Yeah. Well, in these environments, in these more like extreme, like physical challenges.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there, especially when you start getting older, because to me, there is a little bit of like a comparison to your younger self, which I do think is actually a pretty skewed view.
Totally.
Like, you think you could do that stuff when you're younger, but actually you probably really couldn't as well as you think you could have, right?
I never thought of it like that, but I'm sure you're right.
For some of us, and your husband might be included in this, is this whole like peak performance idea. Like, because he does crazy things.
He scales mountains all the time. Yeah.
With
elk hunting.
With weight vests on, not just,
30 pounds of weight.
So he's got, and I think I probably have got a little bit of this, like
yes,
I'm trying to get to this peak performance spot, and I've actually, like, in my experience, I wasn't there in my 20s. Like, I was actually in worse physical shape in my 20s than I probably am today.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, we talked about.
I didn't value it back then.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't a thing that I put any effort or thought into.
We talked about you the whole trip, and I wanted to ask you about this because when we were doing these hikes, in certain spots we saw climbers. Not many. I mean, and to be fair, we were like, good grief, JJ climbs out here. Like, just watching that happen, like watching other people climb. How do you use your mind even at your age today, doing some of those, because you're repelling off completely vertical things. With people that are of all these different shapes and sizes, all these different ages, all these different mindsets about what it is to do these climbs. Like, how does that impact you and how you feel about your own body?
Well, that's a good question.
Sorry to sneak it in there.
Well, to me, it's like, part of climbing, a lot of climbing for me is while it is a physical challenge, it is also a really big mental puzzle challenge, because
exactly.
There's all these things that you have to figure out. It's just like, how do we figure out what gear we need? Not too much, not too little. How do we figure out how to like get from the parking lot to like the place the vertical wall's at, which is usually not just like a nice little paved trail. It's like some bushwacky, crazy route finding through
mile long.
Yeah. Like talk about loose, horrible rock to hike on. And then you got all this weight. You've got like an extra 40, 50 pounds of crap you have on your backpack.
And just to add to that piece though, that is so exhausting to do that. What you
that's
just
the
talked
hardest
about.
part. That's called the approach. The approach is the hardest part every time.
Oh, there's a title for it. Okay, that makes sense.
And because it is most dangerous because it's like unroped. You're sometimes climbing on boulders and things that are maybe a little, that are high. If you fall, you won't die, but you'll probably break something. But like wandering in there. But then the actual act of the climb is the serene part.
I actually believe that.
The fun, calm, slow, methodical part, which is fun.
So I have a question about this though. So even with the four of us at different levels of physical, being in physical shape, completely different levels of mental shape, all four of us, very different. When you have that in climbing, like that's a different kind of activity. And when you have that in climbing, how do you manage people that might have very different physical and mental acuities, or, so how do you manage that?
I'd say I am not an official guide.
Right.
But
you kind of
for our group, I am generally the guide.
Yeah.
Or at least like kind of like the lead.
Yeah.
And that is top of mind with me all the time, because the biggest problem, kind of like you guys experienced on that trail, is if we have a member of our party that somehow gets stuck, can't make it. I mean, I've had that.
Gives up.
Yeah. Is somehow unable to proceed.
Right.
A lot of the times in our climbing adventures, the only way off the wall is
down,
is off the top. There's not enough gear or safety or ways to actually rappel back down. So sometimes there's kind of like a point of no return where we have to get to the top because we don't have enough gear or anything to get to the bottom. We've left it all,
Wow.
So that's the dangerous part, is if you get stuck halfway up a wall, you're really, really stuck.
Wow.
And,
I had not considered that, because that really does amplify exactly the experience that I'm talking about. That amplifies someone becoming afraid or giving up or not wanting to continue. I mean, is amplified when you're on a wall.
Yep. And that's why it's fun.
Freakishly weird.
Well,
although people probably say that about me too.
Well, I told that story about there was a climb where I got to the top, and the young person that was at the top, once I got up to them, caught up to them, said, "Wow, you're so inspiring. I hope I'm climbing at your age," and I almost threw him off the top of the cliff.
I do think, though, there's an exchange of information that happens, though, because at first when you're young, you don't have the same mental awareness. You just don't. Yeah. But you have the physical strength, and you have the carelessness that gets you places that as you age, I think those swap. Well, I think that you might physically have the shape at a certain age, but it's nothing like when you were younger. However, you have the mental choices and the mental experience and the awareness to level the playing field, if not increase your odds.
Yeah, I would say that in my experience, kind of doing some of these like more challenging physical things, I see people just like you have, every age, every single age.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. And frankly, some of the older people that are in climbing or that I meet on hikes, they have decided that age is not their problem, right? It is really clear with a cohort of these people that it's like they have like somehow taken agency over their age and said, hey, yes, I do maybe have some physical limitations that I didn't have when I was 20, but I'm going to figure out how to like work around those things, work with those things. There is also like a risk aversion, I think, that happens when you get older.
Yeah. 100%.
And that actually sometimes might be a good thing, because we all probably done some dumb things when we were 20 around risk.
Some more than others.
But I think the idea that like you can actually stay very physically active, you can be in very good shape, and you can go do these things in the way that works for you.
In the way that works for you. That's exactly right.
You think.
Yeah. Actually, like as an example, in these two parks that we've been talking about, they had many trails that were designed specifically tarred or had concrete sidewalks that you could even be in a wheelchair and could go around and look over the rim of things, and you could, take a trail. And that's what, we are incredibly fortunate with our national park systems in the United States, that we have these wonderful things that have been designed for all ages and all physical abilities. And I just was I was so blown away by that in this last week.
And I think like, we probably all have images of like what an old person looks like.
Yeah.
Just not me, just not you.
No.
But we have these images from like when we were a kid, like what's our great grandpa or grandma look like?
Exactly.
Right?
What's an 80-year-old
look
like?
They're like sitting around in a rocking chair, sipping tea, and that's all they do. But I think that like our baby boomer generation that's kind of coming into that age, and maybe even the older Gen Xers, I see them taking really great agency over what they do as they're aging. And it's not sitting around in a chair. It's out playing pickleball. It's going on these adventures. I have all of these friends that I play tennis with that are retired, and they're like insanely active. I'm actually like, ooh, what do I get to retire and be? Then I can do all this super fun stuff. Yeah. So they're clearly taking agency over their age and saying, hey, I am not going to sit around and age. I am going to run around and age.
Right. And these two women on this trail that I was telling you about, the one was a rheumatoid arthritis doctor. So what would that be? Okay, well, anyway, rheumatologist. There it is. And they all four were in amazing shape. Like, they were in amazing shape. But by the time that we got to the parking lot, those two women were hardly speaking to each other because the other one was so annoyed with the one that was making all the jokes. Yeah. And, then me with my, positive attitude, which seems to drive some people crazy. Oh. The one says to me, "Are you a psychologist?" What? And I said, "No." Oh, and I said, "Why do you ask me that?" And she said, "Well, because you're so positive." Okay, now, didn't we just have a pod a week or two ago when we were talking about high school myths or high school, right? Yeah. And I said, people call me the doctor, and people would, and I get,
You just get
bang.
that energy with random strangers. That's funny.
Bringing it all back home, folks. Well, anyway, I'll tell you that this trip did very much, it's interesting because as I have gotten older, I have kept a certain level of activity, which I will continue to do, as has Mitch. However, it made me aware that not all of our friends are coming along on this ride with us. And you start to have to pick and choose who you can travel with, what kinds of things you can do with people. And I think that gets smaller and smaller if you choose that more adventurous or more active life. And, we always say things like, while you're young, you should still get out and do it. We say these things in sort of a kitschy sort of way. But I'll tell you what, I left there thinking, what else am I going to accomplish like right away while I still have all of my health, all of my everything? I really did feel like this internal pressure to continue to choose things that would be stretching me in a way, both mentally and physically, as soon as I can.
Yeah. And it's never too late. Like I said, like I'm in better shape now than I was when I was younger because I put effort into that.
Exactly.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well. Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them.
We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring.